Welcome back to Atalanta Diaries. I'm your host, Enma Popley. Thank you for joining me. In Atalanta Diaries, we celebrate unique and inspiring stories of breakthrough women to help future generations create their own. If you want to know more about Atalanta or listen to more episodes, you can visit my website www.enmapopley.com. You can also share feedback or suggestions there. I am so excited today to present this special Mother's Day edition, which is a tribute to the amazing mothers and grandmothers of all my Atalantas. These women have made sacrifices, shown unwavering love and resilience, and inspired and motivated their daughters to become their best selves. I want to start with a tribute to my own mother, who has been an incredible influence on my life. She is a homemaker herself, but has always encouraged me, my sister, and my brother to pursue our dreams. She has been our cheerleader in her own gentle way. Her selfless support and love has been the foundation of my success. Even at the age of 79, she's a learner and pushes herself out of her comfort zone and inspires her children, her grandchildren, and all those around her with her resilience, curiosity, and love of life. In today's episode, I have curated powerful nuggets from my earlier conversations who attribute this success to the sacrifices and support of their mothers. So join me to honor the incredible generations of mothers in Atalanta Diaries and celebrate the immeasurable impact they have had on our lives. Ettie, you had mentioned that your mother had dreamed of becoming a doctor herself, right? Which couldn't become a reality. What kind of a role did she play in your journey and that of your sisters?
Well, Mom was everything for us. She was our rock. She was the motor. She organized everything. She ran the house. And she raised us, basically. And she was our model. And she was a model of resilience. And basically what she said went. She made the decisions. My parents were European when they were raising me. When I look at my younger sister, who is 13 years younger than I am, we always laugh in the family. Oh, you had different parents, because my parents were completely different with her, raising her. It's not surprising, but the DNA was the same, but the behavior was totally different because they had already become more established. It was already more years past the trauma. They were more Americanized at that point. So we have a lot of laughs about our different parents. But Mom was the rock, and she made sure that we all went to college. And she was very, very encouraging. That was always her style. She always told us, you can do whatever you want to do, and you'll do great. Not only that, she always pumped us with her lifelong lessons. If somebody asks you if you know how to do something, just say yes. You'll figure it out later, which I realize now was survival skills. And that's exactly how she survived. I mean, some of the strategies. You just did what you had to do and you figured it out. So we learned a lot from Mom, but she was omnipresent in our lives, and she was very special, very resilient, very tough woman, and sometimes you only appreciate it later.
Sandhya, I'm going to ask you a flip question. Who is your inspiration? Like, who's your role model? Who inspires you?
Oh, let's see. I'd have to go to my parents, of course. And my mom, I didn't really know this story until recently. I mean, but my parents, like I said, didn't have a lot of money when they got started. So they already had my sister in India, and he couldn't afford to bring them. And so she had to wait like 18 months. So she's traveling with this baby from this little town in India. They had to take a bus and a train. And at some point they got on like a lorry, like a big truck, and they had to get all the way to Bombay to travel. She didn't know English. So she was taking this big adventure. And I was just like, how did you do it? I think that took a lot of courage on her part, raising three kids and one of them with a disability and just moving on, and she had health problems. She has asthma. And I think it's just resilience. You move forward. You don't sit there and dwell on anything negative. Everybody has problems, but I think the two of them together are just like amazing. They are tremendously committed to their family. Even now, I'm not a baby anymore, but they are still taking care of me. And I'm just so blessed to have them.
Mona Lisa, I'd love to sort of understand from you, how did your early years shape your journey thus far?
I come from a background where my father was a physician and my mother was a lecturer in Indian languages. Believe it or not, it was Sanskrit. So it was a house full of very busy professionals who had to kind of have excellent skills in time management, to give equal time to their profession and take care of the house and responsibilities. And I particularly saw my mother. I derived a lot of inspiration from her. She was a really busy professional, with my dad being a very engaged and active physician. She was one, taking care of the house, me and my sister, and also having a full-time job. And I saw her doing everything. And what I really admired about her, that while she was a wife, a mother, a kind of a homemaker, she also kept her own identity as somebody who was identified beyond being just Mrs. So and so. And she used to interact with her students. She used to mentor them. She used to give them advice. And very importantly, I saw that she was able to make her own decisions and she was financially independent. In her relationship, she brought in equal partnership. So I felt that was really important. And I think those initial years really molded how I looked at myself, how I looked at the world, how I wanted to shape my career in whatever it was, and be independent in many ways while being an equal partner in any relationship I was going to have. I mean, all that didn't come like when I was in school, but gradually as I saw my mother face challenges, it really shaped who I wanted to be and, how I wanted to control my narrative.
Aspire for Her has become a very young and vibrant brand. How have you made this possible, Madhura? Tell us more about this.
So the day that I started Aspire for Her was 8th of March, 2020, Women's Day 2020. And at that time, it was just a germ of an idea. The people who were working with me, I would say the inspiration behind setting up Aspire for Her was my mother, because I was complaining to her about the economic distress that our country was going through. And she turned around and said, I'm hearing all that you're saying, but what are you doing about it? And that's when germ of the idea really took shape. And the other person who actually helped me a lot was my daughter, who at that time, because of COVID, was back home from college. And she was doing her college courses throughout the night. And during the day, she was working on Aspire for Her with me, with all her friends. So the first few things that we did in Aspire for Her, the concept, the strategy, the outreach programs, the ambassador programs, all of this I did with a group of very young women, 18, 19, and 20 years old. And I was very proud of them. I am very proud of them. They have all gone on to doing brilliant things in their own careers themselves. And that's how you see a lot of the tonality of Aspire for Her, the voice of Aspire for Her was theirs. And it wasn't my 50-year-old voice talking about my 50-year-old sensibilities, but it was a very young and a vibrant voice which understood the way the young wanted to relate to a brand.
Nicole, who were your role models? Did you have any mentors in this journey? How did you think through this very intentional philosophy or approach towards building your organization?
I have to mention about my maternal grandma. From a very young age, she gave me this golden line, which I live by till today. And it is more of a blessing to be able to give than it is to take. So you are not at the losing end if you give more. From young, my grandma taught me that because she knew that her granddaughter was more of a giver than a taker. So in a sense, she was just trying to tell me that I have something special inside about me. And it's not as many people in the population that has this mentality that it's okay to give and give and give and give, right? Because you will be rewarded in different ways. And when the timing is right, it may not be an immediate reward. So my grandma, she's the eldest of three sisters, right? I mean, the parents already passed on. At 8 years old, she was working to put food on the table at 8 years old, like carrying bricks and all that kind of thing. No education. She has helped to look after her sisters. From my grandma, from her own personal journey as a woman, how after she married my grandpa, she was working the laundromat. So her own story inspires me. I said if Popo could have made a life, what she's done, I mean, a very simple life, but I'm sure being an educated younger woman, I can also make an impact to the world. She used to be sending foodstuff back to China, during the 80s when it wasn't open yet. And then the other person, which was an invisible inspiration to myself, I really salute my mom. Because my mom is a very modern woman, right? She's got purple hair, she's got funky nails, like orange nails, and the most fashionable grandma on the planet Earth, not a single wrinkle, at 65. And the thing I ask myself, can I live a life like my mom where I don't have a career, I don't have my own personality, I don't have anything to accredit myself outside of the home? So I really champion all homemakers as well, because you have to find your sense of identity as a person. And it's not like a career where, how much dollars I make, what's the KPI, right? I salute my mom because I think, and it's no credit to myself. I'm not saying that I'm a good child, but she has brought two excellent children up in her own ability. And then secondly, she supported my father through the most difficult times, even up till when he was fighting cancer, and then before he passed on in 2016. And so how does she find her own self? So it's like, now on reflection, her largest report card would be in her children, right?
So, Claude, I remember you mentioned last time that the French lady is your tribute to your grandmom, who
Yes.
witnessed 2 world wars, was a seamstress, and had her own little kitchen garden. Tell us, how did she play a role in shaping your personality?
Well, my grandmother was born in 1906. So for the First War, she was a kid. And at that time, kids were not like kids today. They were part of the family as working family. They would have course to do and stuff. And she saw people men coming back from war, wounded, and people the soldiers who got to breathe the gas, And she heard the awful stories of what a butchery it was. And she also felt the lack of everything and privation. And I think it shaped her as a kid. So she would work really night and days. And she would tell me that she would trade work for food, as she was a seamstress. And, in France, even after the end of the war, there was still several years of privations. And my uncles work and do anything to help the family. And my grandmother learned and taught them not to waste anything. You have a fruit or a vegetable that is started to rot, you don't throw it away. You cut out the parts that you cannot use. And if you have leftover, you don't throw them away. You transform them in anything, in something else. And so she was able to make a feast with nothing because she would not waste stuff. You don't waste food. It's a sin, especially when you know that it's so hard to get food. So that's how she would cook, and she had a lot of imagination, because okay, you have that garden, you have herbs, you have vegetable, and you want to make something tasty, but it's affordable. So that's how she raised her children, and that's how also I was raised. My mom was not a wonderful cook, but she was a teacher, so she had the patience to teach me to cook. When I was 2, I could make a quiche Lorraine, and I could make a clafoutis. And several years later, when I was maybe 8, 10, something like that, I could start cooking with my grandmother, who had less patience, but she was more gifted, as a cook. She didn't write anything down. She had all those recipes in her head. And she would not even measure with spoon because, she would pour and just eyeball it. And it was always perfect.
Who is Pooja as a person, and what part of your personality really made you just the perfect fit for these roles?
People ask me to define myself. I always think about how I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I have a 6-year-old. I definitely thrive in a social interaction environment, person to person, face to face. I also really love art. My mom is a very creative person. She's an artist. She went to JJ School of Art in Bombay, has beautiful artistic ability, and taught art when I was a kid growing up, and pretty things, and decorating my house and creating the perfect invitation for my kid's birthday party. All those kind of creative things that my mother really shined on me when I was a kid, wrapping a present with a pretty bow and a pretty name tag. Like, I love all of those things equally to engineering. And, I really pride myself in really keeping relationships.
In our early conversation, you said that your daughter is now taking on, right? So how that is playing out?
Oh, it's typical mother-daughter thing. As a teenager, I knew nothing. And amazing, within a few short years, I learned an awful lot. So she's now nearly 30 and really is very talented. My dear friend Betty Jo, for all my life when KK was little, she'd say, oh my goodness, she's not listening, Betty Jo. She just won't listen. She won't try. Blah. And Betty Jo just grin and pat me, and she'd say, no, okay, it's going in. It's going in. So now as an adult, and she's a mother as well, it's in there. The goodness, the kindness, the hard work, the ethic. She hears me, but I go to her too, because she's pretty sharp.
Jaya, your article about your mother is really heartrending. It's such a beautiful narrative. Did you have a theme in your mind when you started writing?
Yeah. I think, like anything else in life, caregiving is one of the most fraught experiences that we as daughters, as children of aging parents, we really struggle with this decision, right? I mean, many of my friends are also caregivers. And the bottom line is it's not easy either for the caregiver or the person being cared for, right? There are moments when we both lose it. My mother lost it, I lost it, and we tend to focus on these moments without realizing that I actually took care of my mother for, 17, 18 years. And it was only towards the end that it became really, really difficult to take care of her. And in the manner of speaking, I have always taken care of my mother because she's not very adept at navigating the world at any level on her own. So, for example, she never knew how to sign a check. We had to teach her how to do that. Yet, she was extremely intrepid in mastering things that she did not know. After my father passed away, I uprooted her from her own life in India and I brought her here to the US and I set her up in my house in California. And she learned by rote how to use the laundry machine, how to use the dishwasher, how to use the microwave. She had not known any of that when she was in India. So all that she needed, she learned. So when she declined cognitively, those learned skills disappeared. Then it became really difficult for her to manage her life because suddenly everything was alien. But on the other hand, it put an additional burden on me because, I was like caring for her emotionally But suddenly she became this helpless child. She didn't know how to do the simplest thing, like even heat up her coffee, right? So it took such a toll on me that I just felt almost always on demand. And these things nobody really writes about. I mean, the struggles you face as a caregiver, more and more, people are coming out with their stories, but these are the things that really kind of define your day. And as you go along, you kind of wonder, do I exist as a person? I'm just a machine, just performing over and over again. So when it became really bad, then I decided to move her to India, and she passed away after 5 months. But I'm left here now with this whole mindset of, did I do the right thing, right? For all the years I've spent taking care of her, the last few months I was not there. Did I hasten her death? And when I went there and she didn't recognize me, that was a huge blow. I'm her daughter and she didn't recognize me, you know? So I used that article to pour myself out in that way. I just talked about how difficult it must have been for her without me, and how difficult it was with her and without her, and to take that decision. And there is no right or wrong decision. I've come to the conclusion that I didn't make a mistake by moving her to India. I would have definitely put her in a facility here close to me, but there weren't any. There just aren't any facilities that would accommodate someone like my mother, who only eats South Indian food, who only, she lost her ability at languages. So, there's that too. So it just is one of those things that we live here in America for so many years, but we don't have the resources to actually take care of our older people.
Loretta, through your latest publication, Mother, you've brought spotlight to, I think, a very special role, which we often take for granted. Share with us what motivated you to author Mother.
Yeah. So for context, for our listeners, so Mother is really about giving the spotlight on typically unrepresented or alternative modalities of motherhood, right? So incarcerated mothers, rape survivor mothers, teen mothers, single moms, foster moms, LGBTQIA, transgender mom and dads, gay mom and dads, terminally ill mothers, of which one has already passed away. The motivation was, on a very selfish perspective, it was because I wrote it during the pandemic, where there was no end in sight on when I could see my mother again, and there was a fear that I would lose her during this time and not be able to hold her or see her again. The other was to really shed light on having role models, right? For those of us who are privileged enough to have mother figures in our lives, it's a privilege. There are many who don't, and yet there are also many others who take on the role of parenting without the support, mental, financial, geographical, physical support of typical motherhood, right? In a heteronormative setting, you have a father figure who brings home the bacon, the mother figure takes care of the children, and structures to support, whether it's the in-laws or community. In non-heteronormative families, that is even harder. If you're a teenage mom that has been expunged or disowned by your family, or if you are a rape survivor mother who does not even know who the father is, or if you harbor very unhappy memories with how the child was conceived, or with terminally ill mothers who know that their time with their child is very limited, or with LGBTQIA moms and dads who don't have the support, right? Especially in Singapore, where alternative lifestyles are still frowned upon. So that really was the inspiration to use my platform to be able to enable the discussion.
Thank you for listening to this special Mother's Day edition. I really hope you found inspiration in these powerful narratives, and I'm hoping to create more such episodes in the future. Thank you very much to those of you who are continuously sharing feedback with me. It really motivates me to stay committed to my mission and helps me create content that resonates with you. I welcome your feedback and suggestions even for future episodes. Do visit my website www.enmapopli.com to share your thoughts and to access previous episodes of Atalanta Diaries. Please continue to share Atalanta Diaries with your friends, family, and colleagues who you believe will find inspiration in these amazing stories. You have a wonderful day, and I see you next Friday.